Okay, so think about this. Have you ever, maybe, chased that big promotion, knowing it would just devour all your free time? Or, signed some agreement, maybe didn't quite read all the fine print.
Uh-huh. That feeling.
Yeah, or achieve something you really wanted only to feel, I don't know, empty afterwards. If any of that sounds familiar, you've definitely brushed up against what we call a Faustian bargain.
Absolutely. And that central tension, you know, getting something amazing now versus the, let's say, long-term cost, that's precisely why the story of Faust is still so potent after, what, 5 centuries?
Right, it's become this ultimate shorthand, this metaphor for ambition and its consequences. We see it everywhere.
We really do. From, like, towering works of German literature all the way to Hollywood movies. And believe it or not, it even comes up in psychotherapy.
So today, that's where we're headed. We're doing a deep dive into the source material behind this whole idea.
Yeah.
We're looking at the classic German legend of Dr. Faust. He's based on a real historical figure, Johann Georg Faust, back in the 1500s. A scholar, apparently very successful, but also deeply unsatisfied.
Yeah, restless. And our goal here is really to trace how the story changed over time. We want to unpack that original legend, look at the really critical differences between the most famous versions, especially Marlowe's and Goethe's, and show why this phrase, Faustian bargain, is still the go-to term whenever success seems to come at, well, a possibly catastrophic price.
Okay, let's start right there with the bargain itself, the fine print, so to speak. When Faust, our protagonist, summons Mephistopheles, the devil's agent, what's the actual deal? What's being exchanged?
It's kind of beautifully simple on the surface, but incredibly complex underneath. Essentially, Mephistopheles offers Faust pretty much anything he wants. Unlimited magical power, knowledge beyond human limits, worldly pleasures, Mephistopheles' personal service.
The works?
The works, exactly. But, and this is the crucial part, only for a fixed period. Often it's cited as 24 years in the legends.
And the price?
The price is Faust's immortal soul. Once that time is up, the devil gets him, forever. No refunds, no exchanges. It's the ultimate trade. Temporary power and pleasure for eternal damnation.
Wow, stark is the word. Okay, so where did this specific story even begin? The origins are fascinating, especially Faust's motivation. The early versions, the chapbooks, they don't just paint him as curious, do they? He seems almost hostile to the divine.
That's right. The core issue in those early accounts from the late 16th century is intellectual pride. Hubris, really. Faust isn't just bored or seeking knowledge. He's actively rejecting God and theology.
He felt it was too limiting.
Precisely. He was seen as already damned, even before the pact, because he explicitly preferred human knowledge over divine knowledge. She thought theology, religion had hit a wall, but magic, alchemy, science.
Those held the real power, the real answers.
And there's that amazing detail from the source material, isn't there? The one that just perfectly captures that Renaissance-era shift. It says he literally laid the Holy Scriptures behind the door and under the bench.
Refused to be called Doctor of Theology, but preferred to be styled Doctor of Medicine.
Yes.
I mean, can you get more symbolic?
My physical rejection. It totally is. It's a direct insult to the religious authorities and basically a pledge of allegiance to secular earthly knowledge. That choice, putting medicine and empirical study above the sacred texts, that was the initial sin in those early stories. The pact just sealed the deal he'd already made in his heart.
And this ties back to a real person, which I think grounds the legend. It's not pure fantasy. The main inspiration was Johann Georg Faust, a real guy, known as a magician, an alchemist, and ironically, someone who actually got a divinity degree in 1509.
Yeah, the irony is thick there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, scholars have often connected the fear surrounding the Faust figure not just to magic itself, but to the sheer speed of change in the 15th and 16th centuries.
Oh, so?
Well, some have drawn parallels to another Johann Faust. He was Johann Gutenberg's business partner, the guy who helped finance the printing press.
Ah, okay. So the idea is maybe the legend taps into a fear of knowledge getting out of control, like printing press spreading ideas too fast, too far.
Exactly. It could be that the Faust legend became a kind of vessel for anxieties about unchecked knowledge, about the disruptive power of new technologies that were fundamentally changing society. The printing press being the big one, of course.
But isn't that a bit simplistic? Linking the dawn of mass printing to literal damnation feels like a convenient story for, say, the church, wanting to keep control over information. Was the fear really about the technology itself, or was it more about who controlled the narrative?
Well, that's the enduring tension, isn't it? That's why the myth lasts. In that era, Any power source not directly sanctioned by the church was automatically suspicious. So the legend plays right into that. It weaponizes that suspicion. Suddenly, knowledge itself, especially new knowledge, could be literally cursed.
It's also interesting that this wasn't entirely new territory. You mentioned the chapbooks, but there were earlier stories with similar themes, right? Like the Theophilus legend.
Yes, absolutely. Theophilus from the 13th century is a really important context. He also makes a pact with the devil to regain his church position.
But he gets saved in the end.
He does. Through the direct intervention and mercy of the Virgin Mary. He repents, she pleads his case, the contract is torn up. Theophilus provides a precedent for the possibility of redemption.
Okay, so the early Faust legend deliberately shuts that door.
Exactly. It takes the Theophilus model and says, nope, not this time. It hardens the moral. For Faust, in these initial versions, there's no escape clause, no divine bailout. You make this deal, you pay this price, period. It's a much harsher warning.
And that harshness, that straightforward damnation, that's pretty much what Christopher Marlowe locks down when the story jumps to England, right? His play, The Tragical History of Dr. Faustus, around 1592, that really set the standard for a long time.
Oh, completely. Marlowe cemented it as a tragedy of individual choice and corruption. He worked from an English translation of that German chapbook, and his Faust is, well, he's compelling, but ultimately weak.
Weak how? He commands demons.
Intellectually, maybe, but morally weak. He constantly struggles with the idea of repentance, good angel, bad angel, you know. He knows the stakes, he understands the theology of salvation, but he can't bring himself to truly turn back. He's either too afraid of the devil's immediate punishment or just too captivated by the power he wields.
So no ambiguity there. The clock runs out.
The clock runs out, the devils arrive, and he's dragged off to hell, screaming. It's brutal, unforgettable theater. Marlowe's message is crystal clear. You choose this path, you face this end. Irrevocable damnation.
Okay, so that's the dominant version for centuries.
Yeah.
Simple, terrifying morality play. But then, fast forward almost 200 years, and Johann Wolfgang von Goethe starts working on his version of Faust. And he spends, what, 60 years on it?
An incredible amount of time. Basically, his entire adult creative life is wrapped up in it. And what he produces, it just transforms the legend. It goes from that relatively straightforward morality tale into this vast, sprawling philosophical exploration of what it means to be human.
And the absolute key difference starts right at the beginning with the deal itself.
Yes, the agency shifts dramatically. In Marlowe, Faust actively seeks out the devil, initiates the bargain. He wants the power. In Goethe's Faust, Part 1, it's actually Mephistopheles who makes a bet with God referred to as the Lord in the prologue in heaven.
A bet, like the Book of Job.
Very similar structure, yes. Mephistopheles basically says, give me permission, and I can tempt your favorite servant, Faust, and lead him astray. God allows it, expressing confidence in Faust's fundamental nature.
And Faust himself. He's not eager to sign up this time.
Not at all. He's deeply world-weary, profoundly dissatisfied with the limits of human knowledge and experience. He's so convinced that nothing can ever truly satisfy his restless spirit that he agrees to a wager with Mephistopheles, not out of desire for simple pleasures, but almost out of despair.
What are the terms of this wager? It's different from just selling his soul outright, isn't it?
It is crucially different. Faust bets that Mephistopheles cannot provide him with any experience so profound, so beautiful, so fulfilling, that Faust will want that moment to last forever. If Mephistopheles ever succeeds in making Faust say to a moment in time, linger a while, thou art so fair.
Verweiluch, du bist so schön. Then Mephistopheles wins his soul.
So the bet isn't on Faust becoming evil per se, it's on him finding contentment, finding a moment of perfect peace.
Exactly. It's a bet on Faust's infinite striving, his relentless dissatisfaction. Mephistopheles wins only if Faust stops striving, stops seeking, and wants to rest in a perfect moment. It completely reframes the narrative.
That is a massive shift. It's not about punishing forbidden knowledge anymore.
Okay, before we get to the end game and salvation, Goethe doesn't shy away from the damage Faust causes, right? Especially with Gretchen.
Oh, absolutely not. Part 1 is devastatingly tragic. Faust, empowered by Mephistopheles, pursues the innocent Margaret, known as Gretchen. His actions, fueled by lust and aided by magic, lead directly to her complete ruin. Her brother is killed, Her mother dies from a sleeping potion Faust provided. Gretchen drowns their illegitimate child in despair.
It's just awful. She ends up condemned to death, driven mad by grief and guilt.
It's incredibly dark. It shows the terrible human cost of Faust's selfish pursuits, even if his ultimate drive is something grander. He uses this immense power often for base, personal gratification, and the consequences for others are catastrophic.
So the great scholar, the seeker of ultimate experience, he causes just irreparable harm, and yet, spoiler alert, Goethe saves him in the end. How on earth does he justify that? After the Gretchen tragedy, after everything.
That's the revolutionary aspect of Faust, Part 2, which Goethe finished very late in his life. It's complex, allegorical, spans mythology, history, politics. But the ending is the critical part. When Faust finally dies, old, blind, but envisioning a future moment of collective happiness from a project reclaiming land from the sea, he hasn't quite said the magic words to the present moment, but he anticipates saying them to that future.
Close enough for Mephistopheles, though.
Mephistopheles certainly thinks so. He's ready to snatch the soul. He's got his demons lined up. But then angels descend, scattering the demons with roses of all things, and they carry Faust's immortal essence upwards. Mephistopheles is cheated and raged.
And the justification. Why do the angels intervene?
It comes down to that phrase, unending striving, immer streben sich bemüht. The angels declare that he who strives on and lives in error, him we can redeem. God's grace saves Faust because he never gave up the struggle, the quest, the effort to achieve and understand more, even though he made terrible mistakes and caused immense suffering.
Plus, Gretchen's forgiveness plays a part.
A huge part. Gretchen, already in heaven, pleads for him. She represents the eternal womanhood, das ewig weiblich, a force of pure love and forgiveness that draws Faust upward. Her intercession is vital.
Okay, but wait. If God saves him, basically, for trying hard, even with all the collateral damage, doesn't that kind of undercut the whole idea of sin and consequence? Does it cheapen grace?
It absolutely complicates traditional Christian morality. That's why Goethe's Faust is so groundbreaking. It suggests a different path to salvation. It's not about being sinless. It's about the direction of your soul's energy. Are you constantly pushing forward, seeking, learning, creating, even if you fall flat on your face or hurt others? For Goethe, that restless, ambitious, striving spirit, flawed as it is ultimately redeemable through divine grace and love.
So intention and effort matter more than the actual, often messy, outcome.
In Goethe's vision, yes. It makes the Faust legend much more, well, palatable and inspiring for a modernizing world, rather than just a stark warning. It acknowledges human complexity and offers hope, even for the biggest screw-ups, if their heart was in some way aimed at something higher.
That adaptability is key, then. Once Goethe opened that door to interpretation, the template power now, pay later, but maybe there's a loophole could be applied almost anywhere.
Exactly. It becomes the ultimate flexible narrative for any ambition that seems to demand too much of your soul, whatever that soul means in context.
We see that immediately in how it gets picked up in other forms, like F.W. Murnau's silent film Faust from 1926. That's a purely visual telling.
And a stunning one. A masterclass in German expressionist cinema, Murnau really captures the epic scale and the moral horror.
I always think of those incredible images. Mephisto, played by the amazing Emil Jannings, looming over the plague-stricken town like this giant bat, his shadow just smothering everything.
Right. Or the sequence where Faust, made young again, rides with Mephisto on this demonic cloak through the heavens. The special effects were groundbreaking for the 1920s. It shows the sheer seductive spectacle of the power being offered.
And Murnau uses a classic trick for the temptation itself, doesn't he?
He does. Mephisto overcomes Faust's initial hesitation, his piety, by offering him the powers for just one day. Try before you buy, essentially. No obligation.
Ah, the free trial offer from hell.
Pretty much. And of course, once Faust tastes that youth, that power, that ability to heal the sick during the plague, he's hooked. The initial one-day offer just lowers his defenses, and Mephisto easily traps him into the full eternal pact later. It shows how these bargains often start small, with a seemingly minor concession.
That template travels well, too. It gets transplanted straight into American folklore with Stephen Vincent Benet's story, The Devil and Daniel Webster from 1937.
Yeah, that's a brilliant adaptation. The dusty German scholar becomes Jabez Stone, a down-on-his-luck New Hampshire farmer. He trades his soul not for ultimate knowledge, but for 10 years of prosperity, good crops, healthy livestock, freedom from bad luck.
And the climax isn't a philosophical debate. It's a courtroom drama.
Exactly. The great orator and lawyer Daniel Webster defends Stone against the devil before a jury of infamous American historical villains, traitors, pirates, corrupt judges. It keeps the core theme of the Soul Pact, but dresses it in pure Americana, focusing on justice, rhetoric, and, well, Yankee stubbornness.
And the theme can even become, dare I say, lighter, almost comedic, like in the musical Damn Yankees.
Right. Adapted from the novel The Year the Yankees Lost the Pennant, the stakes here are slightly lower.
Her?
Middle-aged baseball fan Joe Boyd sells his soul to the devil, who appears as the smooth-talking Mr. Applegate.
Also, he can become Joe Hardy, a young slugger who can finally lead his beloved Washington Senators to beat those damn Yankees.
It sounds frivolous and it's played for laughs, but it works because the underlying structure is still there. Sacrificing something essential, his life, his identity, his soul, for a deeply desired, albeit temporary, gain, winning the pennant. It just proves how universal the basic framework is. It works for theology, it works for farming, it works for baseball.
But maybe the most intellectually hefty and politically charged adaptation comes later with Thomas Mann's novel Dr. Faustus in 1947. This is way heavier.
Immensely so. Mann wrote it in exile during World War II, and it's a profound critique of Germany's path. His protagonist is Adrian Leverkuhn, a fictional avant-garde composer.
And he makes a pact.
He does. He makes a deal with the devil metaphorically, perhaps literally through contracting syphilis intentionally for 24 years of musical genius, true breakthrough creativity. But the price is steep. He must renounce love, warmth, human connection.
And his fate is tied to Germany's.
Explicitly. Mann maps Leverkuhn's descent into creative brilliance, fueled by illness and isolation, followed by eventual madness and collapse, directly onto the trajectory of Nazi Germany. The composer's poisoned genius, his pursuit of radical innovation at the cost of humanity, becomes an allegory for Germany selling its cultural and moral soul for political power and a twisted ideology.
So the Faustian bargain here isn't just personal damnation, it's national damnation. Leverkuhn's fate is the fate of the soul of Germany.
That's precisely Mann's point. He uses the Faust myth to diagnose how a nation, a culture, could trade its deepest values for a seductive, destructive form of power and brilliance, leading inevitably to catastrophe. It's a harrowing use of the legend as political and cultural commentary.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge scale. Let's shift now to something much more internal, something that might resonate with almost anyone listening. How does this idea of the Faustian bargain show up in, say, psychotherapy?
This is where it gets really personal and, I think, incredibly relevant for understanding ourselves. In psychodynamic therapy, the concept isn't about a literal devil, of course. It's used to describe certain kinds of psychological defense mechanisms, often rooted in very early childhood experiences.
Defenses built for survival, essentially.
Exactly. The idea is that to cope with difficult or non-responsive environments, particularly with primary caretakers, a child might unconsciously make a kind of internal bargain.
What gets traded?
They sacrifice parts of their genuine feeling self, their authentic emotions, needs, vulnerabilities, maybe even their creativity or spontaneity. They trade that authenticity away.
In exchange for what? What's the game in this internal bargain?
The gain is perceived safety, predictability, or attachment. They construct a false self, a persona designed to please, appease, achieve, or simply survive the emotional demands of their environment without causing conflict or abandonment.
Can you give us an example of how that might look in an adult's life?
Sure. Think of someone who's incredibly successful professionally, a real high achiever, but feels chronically empty, anxious, or disconnected from their own feelings and relationships.
Okay.
Therapy might uncover that. As a child, they learned their genuine expressions of sadness, anger, or neediness were met with parental withdrawal, criticism, or hostility. So the unconscious bargain was struck. I will suppress those unacceptable parts of myself. I will become the perfect, compliant, high-achieving child to guarantee approval, or at least avoid rejection.
So they get the external validation, the success.
Right, the false self achieves worldly success, maybe even admiration. But the cost is profound alienation from their own core being. The self that won the prize isn't actually them. They traded away their authentic inner life for psychological survival years ago, and they're still paying the price in feelings of hollowness or quiet desperation.
That's incredibly poignant. Sacrificing your own reality for a feeling of safety. It really hammers home that whether the devil is offering magic powers or political dominance or just a moment's peace from a difficult parent, the fundamental cost is always about losing some vital part of yourself, some kind of integrity.
Precisely. And bringing it into the psychological realm shows why the Faust legend isn't just a historical curiosity.
Yeah.
The battlefield just shifts from, a crossroads in a German forest to the internal landscape of the human psyche. The bargain remains just as relevant.
So pulling all these threads together, It seems the Faust legend sticks around, not because we're all secretly worried about literal demons anymore, maybe, but because it gives us such a powerful vocabulary for talking about the difficult trade-offs inherent in ambition.
Yeah, it perfectly frames any pursuit, knowledge, power, success, even just feeling okay that seems to demand too high a price in return, whether that price is the eternal damnation, national ruin, or your own psychological wholeness.
And the story itself evolved. From Marlowe's stark warning about hubris and inevitable hellfire.
To Goethe's much more complex, nuanced vision where redemption is possible, not through purity, but through relentless striving, through effort, and ultimately, through grace and forgiveness. That shift tells us a lot about how Western culture's views on sin, potential, and redemption have changed.
It really does. There's that quote from the philosopher Søren Kierkegaard who said something like, "Every notable historical era will have its own Faust."
That feels spot on, doesn't it? And it makes you think, given where we are today, with the incredible pace of technology, the pressures for constant growth and professional achievement, the sheer amount of information, what is the modern knowledge or power that represents the most tempting, maybe the most dangerous Faustian bargain right now?
That's the question, isn't it? For you listening, what's on offer today? Is it trading away your privacy for digital convenience, maybe compromising ethical lines for faster results at work? Or is it closer to that psychological bargain, trading your authentic self for likes, for followers, for professional validation?
What glittering temporary gain might tempt you to sacrifice something more lasting, more essential?
That's the enduring power of the Faust story. It keeps pushing us to ask that question. Something to think about.
Definitely something to ponder until our next deep dive.
We'll see you then.